2 weeks got my passport, 2.5 weeks got my visa. In less than 2 months, I lived in Sweden for a year, only knowing hey and nay. This year transformed my life. One of the great gifts of the year of Sweden is it helped me figure out key questions that I needed to answer. The first question was, how is my Christianity biblical versus American? It really confirmed my faith. There were Christians there, God was real, and a lot of my friends had some cultural blind spots that they just couldn't see. And I'm like, well, if they have cultural blind spots, what are mine? Second one, it really impacted my view on education. I was in the natural science line, which was one of the top academic lines. Most of my classmates did not go directly to college. They went and they experienced life, and now they're environmental engineers, traveling the world, creating amazing, inventive things that I don't even understand. But they did not approach life the same way we do here. Also, it impacted my view on culture and on community. I got to live within 2 miles of where my grandfather had grown up. And there was a family homestead that's up there in the black and white picture that has been in the family since the 1500s. And what's fascinating is my mom's cousin, he loves studying genealogy things, and he was able to prove that the start of Sweden was actually at the bridge where the family homestead is. And today it's actually a tourist site where people come and take pictures of this is where Sweden originated. It also helped me think generationally. A couple years back, I went back to visit my cousin who is living on another family homestead, and you could see the timber up there. And while I was there, she was sharing with me this report that she had of 100 years of how they processed timber to live off the land. And there was this one spot where there was a long period of time that they had not done the timber processing. And she said, you could see that there, and the reason they waited was they knew that she and her husband and children were going to be living there, and they saved up through timber so they'd have the money to renovate the house before they moved in. I said, this is really cool, Marie. You must be thinking about your kids. And she looked at me, she goes, no, Wendy, I'm thinking about my grandkids. And they had a whole study of where in the property they took out the logs, where they would replant, so that there would be sustainability generation after generation after generation. So out of all of that, with reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, I decided my next step would buy real estate. I said, Lord, you choose the neighborhood, have this heart for impacting the community. And so long story short, the house that opened up for me was in the inner city of Durham. I was white, I was single, I had my mom and my sister, and everyone thought I was crazy. It was before we knew what gentrification was. It was before anyone was doing anything like this, but I knew that's where God called me. So I moved to the inner city, started building relationally, because change also comes from the inside out. Just building my business, getting the mindset shifts that I had in place, and then an opportunity came up for me to teach entrepreneurship to the underground church in China. So for 6 months, I thought I was doing leadership really well. I had the right woman running my company. Now I could go do ministry because my sustainability was done. Went to China, had an amazing experience, and I had the wrong woman running my company, and that was my first $200,000 experience. She ruined my credit. She paid herself but didn't pay bills. She didn't invoice. Everything was in a shamble. So I had to come back home, goal setting going wrong again. And there were some key lessons that came out of that experience. Again, I could tell you the story of how she messed up, but the reality is leadership is that I have to build bridges of trust, and I put too much weight on that bridge. And a lot of times as Christians, you've got to prioritize the heart and people's heart and fit for business. And I see potential. I'm an entrepreneur, y'all. I see potential. You can see potential, but when you're building a business, you need to hire for fit. Learn that. I put too much weight on that bridge. I also became very committed that I wasn't going to let someone else's weakness dictate to me how I was going to live. Because I could tell you that, you know what, no one really cares about my business like me. See, here, I can prove to you why I got to keep it small and not build that capacity. Versus being like Babe Ruth, who, you know what, he was the strikeout king as much as he was the home run king. Well, praise the Lord, I struck out, but you know what? I was pretty close to being in a home run. I'm going to figure out what I need to do to change so that I can hit that home run, so I can build team, so I can have healthy relationships that I can depend on and they can depend on me.